All right, look, guys, let's break down John chapter 7. I'm going to try to do it in one part, so it might be a two-parter. Yeah, that's long. Okay, so the chapter context, John chapter 7 is the beginning of the end of Jesus' public ministry. The feeding of the 5,000 in chapter 6 was the pinnacle of earthly popularity. That enthusiasm was dampened when Jesus explained the true meaning of his ministry. Here in chapter 7 and 8, Jesus will confront his critics at a major Jewish festival, using metaphors drawn from ritual celebrations to highlight themes from his preaching. The following chapters include additional miracles and teachings from Jesus as his eventual crucifixion draws near. So let's break this down. So chapter 7 and 8 represent the beginning of the end of Jesus' public ministry. In these passages, he will openly challenge the spiritual errors of the Jewish leaders and declare his role in the salvation of mankind. In response, the religious officials will turn deeper towards a plot for murder. John chapter 7 begins after another leap in the Gospel's timeline. The event of chapter 6 occurred around 1 year prior to Jesus' crucifixion. The events of chapter 7 centered on the Feast of Booths Tabernacles, happened about 6 months later. This feast was among the most important in Jewish tradition. It was a hub of religious and cultural activity. Okay, my mouth went out on me again. So while reading this chapter, it is important to recognize the meaning of John's terminology. At the time, Jerusalem would have been filled with local foreign visitors, Jewish pilgrims, and many others. As such, there are three main groups involved in this narrative. The Jews, used most often in the Gospel of John, is a reference to the religious leaders of Jerusalem or those who support them. The people are the mixed crowd of those attending the festival. The third group are Jewish people living in and around Jerusalem, most of whom have sided with the opinion of the local religious leaders. These things is dirty. The passage begins with Jesus' family mocking him, possibly with a reference to the event of chapter 6. They assume a man seeking publicity and fame ought to do his magic tricks at more public festivals of the year. By all reasonable interpretations, the brothers mentioned here are all the literal half-brothers of Jesus. These are the biological sons of Mary. Jesus, however, still sensitive to God's timeline, chooses not to go to the feast with them. Instead, he will go later and alone to be more discreet. Jesus' family members are not the ones anticipating his arrival in Jerusalem. The crowd discusses who he might be. John 7, 1-13. The discretion only lasts a few days. Jesus began teaching and preaching in Jerusalem midway through the week-long feast. Early in this teaching, Jesus makes a remark by which may seem backwards at first. He says, "Those who are obedient to God will know whether Jesus' words are true." He does not say that those who determine the truth can be obedient. This reflects the fact that a person's intentions are always more powerful than evidence or reason. He then challenges his critics for their shallow insistence on Sabbath keeping, which does not follow the spirit of the law of Moses. John 7, 14-24. Jesus was reading people like the Sunday paper, honey. His open criticism, along with his established reputation for miracles, creates a crisis of confidence regarding Jerusalem's religious leaders. This includes the Pharisees, Sadducees, and scribes. From the perspective of the people, there are three possibilities. Either the leaders are too weak to stop a blasphemer, too confused to do anything, or they somehow accept his claim. This only adds fuel to the religious leaders' desire to silence Jesus permanently. Meanwhile, the people continue to debate whether Jesus meets the qualifications of the Christ. John 25:31 through 25 through 31. While the people are reluctant, the Pharisees are not. They arrange for Jesus to be arrested, yet they are confused by his comments about going and not being found. During a ceremony involving water, Jesus proclaims himself as the source of living water. Echoing his conversation with the woman at the well, John chapter 4, verse 10. This inspires a fresh round of debates and questions. The people know some of the prophecies about the Messiah. They think they know Jesus, but some of their facts are confused. John 7:32 through 43. While the people are reluctant, the Pharisees are not. They arrange for Jesus to be arrested, yet they are confused by his comments about going and not being found. During a ceremony involving water, Jesus proclaims himself as the source of living water. I read that one. Okay, so the men sent to arrest Jesus apparently think arrest is inappropriate. They may have expected to find a raging rebellious man. Instead, they come to the Pharisees, noting that Jesus' teaching is unique. In response, the Pharisees throw a spiritual temper tantrum, and that's exactly what it was. They result in the officers in the crowd claiming that if the Pharisees do not accept Jesus, his words cannot possibly be true. John 44 through 49. Division over Jesus extends to these religious leaders themselves. Nicodemus, the same man who spoke with Jesus in chapter 3, will make an appeal for due process. In response, his peers ridicule him and reject his suggestion. This makes chapter 7 a critical passage for understanding the Pharisees. Their example is a warning about how arrogance, ignorance, and obsession with tradition can cause spiritual blindness. Y'all, my eyes are crossing right now. The Gospel of John was originally written without chapter or verse division. Those came later, so separation from one chapter to the next don't always mean the writer has a new topic. The last verse associated with chapter 7 begins the story of Jesus and the adulterous woman, John 7:53 through 8:11. Most scholars believe that passage is an authentic, inspired account of real events. Some do not, but nearly all agree it was not originally found in this place in scripture. Verse 12 of chapter 8 seems to flow very naturally from Jesus' teaching here. He continues declaring his role as the Messiah using various metaphors. All right, y'all, come back for part 2.